literature concerning architecture, concerning environment of the land. So, Maria, thank you very much.
I would like to thank the American Institute of Architects for providing me with this opportunity to show you some of our research and our conclusions related to design, and especially on the field of science, architecture, and science. Today I'm giving you two books. The Tao of Architecture, and the second one is Fundamentals of Luminous Radiative Transfer. It's a bit more technical, but not so much. So I'm giving this to you on behalf of our research group, Karma. This is a Sanskrit Ka, the first letter you see there in the presentation. And since I'm maybe telling some things you are not too familiar with, please don't hesitate to interrupt me and ask me any questions you would like now and after. And as I told you, we are going to discuss on the role of science. And if you want a further reference what I'm going to talk about, you can of course look at some books and magazines, but also you can download this article that I sponsor myself, so it's a free download at indec.com, and you can read more in detail about what I'm going to talk today. So I shall begin with a quote by a Nobel Prize winner, Ernest Rutherford. No physics can be good unless it can be explained to a barman. And so I believe that you can see that science is nothing very frightening or harmful if we are going to follow this quote. Rutherford was a New Zealander, so inevitably I could recall some of my experience there in that region of the world. We have just finished a project of a hotel in New Zealand, and well, the time that was allotted to me it's very early for Spain, maybe not the best time for a speech, but it will be the right time down there in New Zealand or Australia. And one of science icons, and also my icons, Mr. Richard Feynman, once started a series of lectures on quantum physics in New Zealand. And well, he said the good thing about speaking this matter here in New Zealand is that if something goes wrong, nobody will know. And that could be also applied to my speech today, though we are going to record it in YouTube. But and also it reminds me the first time I visited Sydney, I took a plane from Japan to see John Hudson's Opera House, and I remember hearing something by the speakers in the cabin in the plane, something like, "Hi mates, I'm Captain Wilson, and I'm going to take you all the way down to Australia." So good evening down there in New Zealand and Australia. And well, from the very beginning, in 5 of the lecture, I like to be telling you what is our scientific method and the general method of science. So you see that it's something that everybody can use in his personal life and in his design process. It's not something that we need a chemistry kit or some very specialized equipment. We just need objectivity. And we need not to be afraid of errors or mistakes if we take into account this theory. We must begin with the mistake and transform it into what is true. That is, we must uncover the sources of error. Otherwise, hearing what is true won't help us. It cannot penetrate when something is taking its place. To convince someone of what is true, it is not enough to state it. We must find the road from error to truth. The road, the path. I must plunge once and again in the waters of doubt. So if you apply faithfully these ideas, you can be considered a scientist. Because, well, as previously said, I have traveled a lot. I have flown more than 1 million kilometers. And I see that little by little, universal truths that are held by our habits, custom, race, religion, or whatever, are rapidly disappearing. And there's only one thing left. For instance, I know you have been recently to Japan in the previous conference, as Mr. Mike told me. And you can see many people believe that there everything is like upside down. If here you turn a knob to the left or clockwise, in Japan it will be counterclockwise. If you put some lever up, in Japan it will be down. Everything is upside down. So after living there a long time, I have lived there more than 5 years, you start making yourself even weird questions like, after all, are they humans? Or something like that. But then you realize that when they go to bed, every adult Japanese person, maybe they not pray, or maybe they not do the same things that we do here in Europe or in America. But everybody takes these medicines, or her medicines, before going to bed. Why? Because science told them to. So little by little, science is giving form to our culture and to our way of living. And I personally believe that this will be for good. But the late Eric Hobsbawm, this historian, once said that without science, mankind could no longer live anywhere on this earth. However, people hated science more than ever before. According to him, this was the biggest paradox of the 20th century that historians will have to strive hard to explain. I believe now that this love of science is the reason why contemporary architectural design does not develop following scientific paradigms. So, from the architectural point of view, we could focus on some pending problems, important problems, and we could try to provide a solution, scientific solution to this problem. Well, believe me that I know some architects near here that would die before trying to solve any problem of their clients, very affluent, by the way. And the true scientific attitude would be to see what the problem is and to try to provide a solution for this problem using objectivity. That means you try to detach yourself as much as possible from the problem, like if you were not involved. And you would agree with me that most contemporary architects, especially if they are famous, they try to involve their subjectivity and personality within the project and influence, bias the project by their habits, culture, religion, etc., and to be sure that their seal and imprint is very well embossed inside the project, instead of trying to see what is the problem, and trying to see if your solution is efficient, sustainable, and so on. So I would recommend that you try to do the other way around. And some of these problems that are rather obvious are the problems of energy use or sustainability, to which I have devoted a considerable amount of time. For instance, this is the typical question of energy use in the world according to the World Watch Institute. And you see here that the energy use is divided roughly by 50% corresponds to the building sector. So we architects are responsible for 50% of the energy used in the whole world. But we believe that this is not our fault. This is something about the industry, transport, or whatever. No, industry is just 25%, transport is 25%, and this sector are diminishing their carbon emissions, but not the building sector. The building sector is increasing their carbon emissions, mainly because we designers and architects, we believe that we don't have nothing the matter with energy use, while it's clearly the other way around. And if we look to solutions for that, let me tell you that we might have, for instance, the availability of solar energy. Of course, many people know this fact and use solar energy well, to build machines, thermal machines like solar collectors, and this is part of the solution. But of course, solar collectors and machines you have to invest to build them and to maintain them. So you need some financial support. And I decided to use solar energy in another way. This is to use directly solar energy inside the buildings to transport the energy from the facade of the building to the inside of the building. And how can we do this without investment? Because we already have glazed apertures. We only need a method to ensure that the fenestration is properly designed to achieve the maximum amount of available solar energy. And you will be surprised to learn that, for instance, in so foggy and misty climate like London, for 5 months a year, you have more than 40% energy from the sun. And, well, Tokyo is a bit worse in the summer due to the monsoon, but even in Tokyo, in the winter is sunnier than Seville. So this graph wants to express, perhaps not adequately, that in the whole world you find solar energy and you can use it just by properly designing your apertures to the outside. Let me explain you how we had hints or suggestions of this attitude along history. And if we go far back into history to ancient Egypt, we will find the same idea depicted in reliefs in temples and in every artistic or cultural expression of these people. For instance, this is a relief of Pharaoh Akhenaton and the royal family, and you see that the sun rays are ending in small hands that protect the family, the royal family. So the sun is it's a god, of course, but it's a friendly god. It's encompassing and human in some way. Later on, I will delve deeper on this concept. And of course, in the tomb of Tutankhamun, we find the same concept. And even in the famous shrines of the Valley of the Kings, so these are all royal tombs, and you see depicted the goddess of the sky, Nut. The sun is traveling inside her body, so let's say she's got sunshine in her stomach, and the next day the sun is reborn. Is born again. So this was an important matter for their credence, for theology, but also suggest the strange notions presented by Aristotle in his physics that man is begotten by man and by the sun as well. It is clearly a hint of solar culture. So let me explain a little bit the evolution of space according to this phrase of Aristotle and according to some other famous architects. For Aristotle, space was void and nothingness. So it was not matter at all. But I shall remind you that today is exactly 60 years after Frank Lloyd Wright presented a similar conference to this in front of the AIA in New York in 1952, entitled The Destruction of the Books. And in this famous conference that has been published several times, he based on the ideas from the Tao Oriental philosophy, said that for architecture, space is as important as matter. By quoting a sentence by Lao Tzu, saying that when we build a house, we cut some windows and some doors, but the space between the walls is more important than the windows and walls. So it was the first time that the space was put in the same value as the matter or the walls or ceilings. And now, what do we believe in science? We believe that space is just another dimension of matter. One of the dimensions of matter is space. So, this is the news. And you can see more contraptions and devices that the ancient Egyptians did for the sun. Like this is the solar barge for the transport of the sun during the night. So this is the inner sanctuary of most Egyptian temples. And of course, this architecture reflected this idea. So we had to build some openings in the ceiling. Bear in mind that this stone slab weighs like 5 tons, could be put at a height of 20 meters without cranes. I myself, I don't know how to do this, and I don't know how to carve these small slits in place. And they were done to produce the effect of sun rays getting into the chapel or cellar of the temples. But especially, I would only like to focus on this chapel of the Pharaoh Thutmose III. It's called the Hall of Festival. It's in the temple of Ammon in Luxor. And here we find a very interesting architectural innovation, which is to produce the first clear-story window in the history of architecture, present of so many other designs, and also to produce the first light shelf in history, because the sun of a high altitude in Egypt will reflect here in this slab and will get into the room. And you see that this is not a happenstance, this is not casual, since the slabs have been cut with these inclinations, specifically for the light to enter. And some other details that I'm showing you in the reference of this temple. Here you can see the windows. There is some encasement and space for a frame that we haven't found the frame, but it's clearly something that was made on purpose. And this is the concept that was used for the first time, and is the president of the Roman Basilica, and from there the Gothic Cathedral, and so on and so on. We can get even to the Corbusier Chandigarh original drawing, where we see a solar charge, and also the same concept in Risolet for reflection of the sunlight. But Egypt is in the Mediterranean zone, but it's a bit far from Seville, so I'll speak a little bit about does this solar culture appear in Seville? And the answer is yes, because we have a Phoenician sanctuary of 3,000 years ago near here in Carambolo, and archaeological evidence show that the building of the temple and all its refurbishments were marked by a body of beliefs that established during the summer solstice the absolute necessity to face the rising sun for either the chapel of the main god Baal or the whole temple. So, even here in Seville, we have produced these 3D models of the Carambolo temple, where the famous Carambolo treasure is found, the gold treasure. And you see that the primitive building and the subsequent additions were oriented to the sunrise in summer solstice. We have been to the place and we have checked this on the specific days. And you would say, well, this is a happenstance. Somebody was there around the summer solstice and decided to orient the building in this direction. But this is not the case, because we have found this document, the solar pericope, compiled by the Roman Emperor Julian. And he says that there is a philosophical doctrine by the Phoenicians that declare the rays of light as the undefiled incarnation of pure mind. So we have evidence that all this solar concept was related to their philosophy and their theology, to Emperor Julian. If now we look at Vitruvius, Roman architect, he also discussed the matter to some extent, and he quotes inventor of the cubic sundial, who is a Babylonian called Berossus. You see the type of sundial. You see that there are no numbers, and behold that instead of numbers we have the Greek letters alpha, beta, gamma, and so on, different times. And this is an invention by Berossus, a Babylonian writer and priest of Marduk, an astronomer. He invented the semicircular sundial hollowed out of a cubical block. If we also look at the Bible, we see that there are some writings about sundials and solar theology and culture that obviously would have passed from the Phoenicians to the Israelites by intermarriage of princesses, kings, as is described in the Old Testament. But especially I want to focus in this passage of 2 Kings, in which there is a miracle by the Lord to save the king Hezekiah, and the signal for this miracle would be that the shadow would go backwards 10 steps in a kind of sundial that a former king had built. Then the prophet Isaiah called on the Lord, and the Lord made the shadow go back the 10 steps it had gone down on the stairway of Ahaz. After archaeological evidence, we found this stairway of Ahaz. The only place where this is depicted, this scene from the Bible, is in El Escorial, which is the home of all Spanish and American architecture. It was personally designed by Philip II, who was the sovereign of a kingdom or an empire where the sun never set, because it included territories in all continents. And this description from the Bible is painted by the architect Pellegrino di Baldi in the walls of the library of Escorial. You can find some anachronism, like for instance the sundial has got Roman numbers, which is obviously impossible. But later on I will explain why they painted this. But for now, suffice to say that it's not, it's also not a happenstance, because the statue of King Hezekiah is outside the main basilica in bronze covered with gold. And the reason why Philip II, who was very ill at the time of finishing this complex of Escorial, was that he also believed that the Lord would make a miracle and cure him of his many diseases. So that is why he recalled this figure or ideas from Old Testament. And this is the stairway of the house, according to archaeological surveys. You see that the shadow of this wall is marked on the steps and can go up and down at sunrise and sunset, and in this way they could measure the time. So there is also why climax in Greek, from where the word climate derives, means stairway. And the last example, also from ancient Egypt, is here, the temples of Abu Simbel by Ramses II, which have been very inspired for so many artists and writers, and also American writers. And here in the four colossus of the entrance to the temple, we find many clues of what we are trying to explain today. And we can also quote poets like Shelley, who, on watching this, said, "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my work, ye mighty and the spirit." Ozymandias is how they call Ramses, because they couldn't read hieroglyphs and they couldn't know the exact name of Ramses. So they call it Ozymandias. And Herman Melville, yes, you can call me Ismail, wrote, passing by the area, "Masonry, and is it man's, a shudder at thought of ancient Egyptians." So inside the chamber of this temple, we find the four main gods of ancient Egypt, but the god of darkness is always in the shadow. The other three are reached by a sun ray entering through the temple, but this on the here on the left side is always in shadow, because it's the god of darkness, the dark. So this is the notion that immediately comes out of the experience inside the temple, that architecture is born in human beings when they become conscious of the infinitude of space and the inevitability of death. Isn't this the same that Christopher Wren tried to say when he wrote his epitaph in St. Paul? "Visitor, if you require a tomb, look down. If you require a monument, look around." And going back to Escorial, I have closely surveyed all the paintings, fresco paintings by Milanese architect Pellegrino Tibaldi, and I discovered the following that I will tell you now, and I think it's a very important clue for everything that we are now trying to explain. Is the encounter between Solomon and Sheba, which is described in the Bible in 10 Kings 3, like you find here down under. And these two savants are discussing mathematics, the Fibonacci series, and many other things. But if you look at the Bible, you only read that they met and they were discussing some matters. So why is that we have a Hebrew inscription in the velvet cover of the table? And nobody knew why there is such inscription. some time to find the meaning of this sentence. And what is written there is Kalvamila Vamishkal Ubamisura, which means all in figure, measurement, and weight. This is the lemma of Isaac Newton. Omnia numero pondere misura. Newton knew perfectly the Hebrew language. In fact, he wrote 3 books about the Temple of Solomon. But he decided to put this phrase in Latin, omnia numero. So I found out from where comes this phrase, and this phrase is not in the Bible. And finally, after much research, we found that this phrase is in the Book of Wisdom by Solomon. But this book was never written in Hebrew. It was written by a Jewish man in Alexandria, Egypt, in Greek. So it's clear now that Philip II and his attendants wanted to, I have not been talking to Mr. Cameron recently, he wanted to send us a message of why he did such kind of architecture as Korean, a hidden message, and to put it in the language of God, like it came from the Bible, but it doesn't come from the Bible. It is their invention to say that everything is in figure, number, in weight, and measure. And going now to modern architecture, it is clear in the works of so many people, like for instance Scamozzi, Palladio, and so on, that they are interested in solar culture, solar exposure, orientation to winds. We find here the description of all winds, and this is Villa Bartolini by Scamozzi, who was built near Venice, and he tells us that this is the midday facade, or to the south, and this is the north, and even some graphs trying to express the light inside the building. But the real scientific approach to the matter comes from Johannes Heinrich Lambert, a Swiss man who wrote a celebrated treatise on light, written in Latin and called Photometry in 1760. Here you find some graphs of the treatise of Lambert, which is important because the mathematical expressions and the laws that he found are used by many people today, like 300 years after. One of the architects who used these Lambertian theories inadvertently was Hans Meyer. Hans Meyer, who had to, in the 40s, had to emigrate to Mexico. He was one of the last directors of the Bauhaus, presented in 1927 this project for Basel in Switzerland. It's called Peter Schul School for Girls, based on drawing and technical matters. And this is a project very well known. But I want today to focus on a drawing that appears here at the corner of the main perspective of the project. And behold, if we look in detail to this graph, it is a graph which says in German, theoretical curves of light. 4 windows inclined 60 degrees, which are the clerestory monitor roofs on top of the building. And it's not very clear here, but the unit for this graph is foot candle. It's not the German unit, it's foot candle in British system for light. And we found that he had taken this graph from the work of the American engineer Henry Howard Higby from Ann Arbor, Michigan, that only 2 years before had published. He was working for the Detroit Steel Company and immediately realized the potential of steel structure for glazing and so on, and introduce light into the buildings, and designed a complete theory on calculation of light for windows. And this revolutionary theory by Higby was immediately adopted by Hans Meyer, only 2 years after. And it's also not a happenstance, because if we look at the papers of the project, we see, for instance, that Hans Meyer says that the goal is seeking skylight illumination of all school premises, and even says compare the results of phase 1 and 2 of the lighting calculation. And if we go to the lighting calculations, we see that even the name of Higby is mentioned here, and also here. The only problem with this was that Meyer didn't know how to perform the calculations, so the results were totally mistaken. But the intent was very clear and very keen on this matter. So he and many others were echoing the ideas presented by famous architectural historian Siegfried Gideon in the book The Eternal Present, when he says, "It is light that induces the sensation of space. Space is annihilated by darkness. Light and space are inseparable. If light is eliminated, the emotional content of space disappears, becomes impossible to apprehend. In the dark, there is no difference between the emotional evaluation of a passive and of a highly novel behavior." And this is now the law invented by Lambert in Latin and here in English. It's just the common physics reciprocity principle, which equates the light receives from two surfaces, both are equally luminous. And this is a modern version of this principle that we have produced recently, published in the Journal of Quantitative Spectroscopy and Radiative Transfer in America. So, what do we believe? We believe that nowadays, in an era of organized building construction and new social and economic requirements for an ample majority, the so-called secret of good architecture cannot be solely entrusted to a few isolated geniuses who are often unable to explain rationally how their results have been accomplished. The tenet that architecture is so special that cannot benefit in one way or another from science is altogether false. Architectural processes and products are no longer conceivable without objectivity and scientific support. Poor performance in that respect raised understandable objections against the prestige of admirable works and famed architects. It is crucial that we realize that science, slowly but surely, is giving form to our culture, and the possibilities that it offers to civilization are numberless and still remain beyond suspect in most cases. Thus, for me, building design is an array of methods and procedures by virtue of which we can give architectural expression to the laws of nature and those of society. It is well known that the booms and problems of science have posed a keen interest to all peoples in different epochs of their history. From the standpoint of physics, the discussion on nature has been unceasingly kindled in the last few decades. The possibilities that the control of nature in its many facets confer to science and thus to civilization are numberless. We could summarize a little by stating that overall, we have dealt with the questions of science in architecture because when mankind builds its environment, that is, its architecture, it automatically produces tension and variations on the energy that is associated with the Earth's surface. These alterations contribute to changes in well-being, health, and energy savings, which are currently demanded by the users. Recently, one of the main problems in environmental science applied to architecture has been to determine in which way the existing physical fields are transformed due to building's physiognomy and towards which direction or design should be oriented in the search for a sounder transmission of climatic events. Or, in other words, how the design and the architectural forms could be improved to achieve an optimal and coherent distribution of natural energies. Famous buildings from the past and the present have brandished their excellencies on these respects. Their thresholds were praised from an artistic point of view for the way in which solar radiation penetrated. It is said, for instance, that these buildings scattered the light when it was excessive or augmented it with sparks. Inside their walls, the light itself is being turned by bolts or magnets as quaint, soft, being uplifting, ruthless, or even, in Peter Hanke's words, nonchalant. However, once we have rejected the idea of accurately reproducing the same building in the same place, how are we supposed to benefit from the same knowledge or poetry without the help of any design tool? It is easy to agree that at least we would need to find some proofs to ensure that each time the proper effects are accomplished. These tools ought to have universal validity and a clear objective application because their purpose is not solely aesthetical, as one could argue it was the case in ancient times. So, I will show you very briefly some of the tools we have produced in this sense. This is the main kernel of the simulation programs that we have produced. We all derive from the geometry of spheres. So the sphere that we have here in the restaurant. This is a shape that could be sometimes used for architecture that I myself have built an igloo in order to plan and put that for temperature equals to -17 degrees centigrade, but inside the igloo is we apply the superposition principle, so we can produce many shapes useful for architecture, and especially the light distribution, as I told you, inside spheres and spheres with circular openings, like in the case of the fountain. I bring you here this graph because this was developed by the American engineer Adam Stratton McAllister in 1911. And McAllister produced such table for finding the light under circular light emitters or sources. But I still wonder why he didn't realize or try to check his theory and his formula against buildings like the Pantheon or similar buildings that existed at the time in America, since at least the Monticello by Thomas Jefferson was like very old or so. But perhaps the answer is that he was an engineer and he didn't realize the potential for daylight of this theory. So we can evolve this shape to common shape in all churches in the world and many other type buildings. type, also this type. We can use the projected solid angle principle. Doing this, we have found new geometries, like this curve, was not formerly available, and it's very useful for automatically producing all the simulations. And we establish the radiative fields in all types of building in any part of the world. And I will show you just the main examples, like Roman Pantheon. These are simulations. And if you ask me about aesthetic, I may agree with John Keats when he said that beauty is truth, true beauty. But it's all you know on earth and all you need to know. And look now at Sant'Andrea al Quirinale by Bernini. We can, very complex space, but we can also perform simulations with the help of these powerful tools and find the level of radiation and light in all parts of the building and discover more about the architecture. Because why is this that the chapel of Sant'Andrea is more illuminated when it is backwards in the church, and there is no facade in this area because there is another building that has nothing to do with the church? It is because Bernini had hidden some lighting source there at the chapel. And you cannot see how he produced this window. You have to climb on top of a tree to produce this photograph. And see how that's what we did, because no guide and no professor knew anything about the hidden window in Sant'Andrea. But by making the simulation, we realized that it had to be there, and it was. And this is just the last example. By the way, don't try to design curved steps on a helicoidal stairway when you are at home alone. This is by Guarino Guarini, the author of the Holy Shroud Chapel, which is outrageously disclosed, and they say it will never open again because of some problem. And if we look at this building of San Lorenzo, to a sundial and a clock at the facade, and behold, this is a radiant inspiration on a late Baroque building based in the Mosque of Cordoba, but with a totally new and revolutionary structural concept, because he was a priest, architect, astronomer, mathematician, and he pronounced this famous sentence that I want to show you: Taumaturga mathematicorum miraculorum insigne, pereque regali architectura corusca. So now mathematics is not something frightening, it's not something boring, but it's magical, it's wondrous, and shines on regal and magnificent architecture. And just a few more examples of contemporary architects. This is Bruno Tao in Japan. He realized of the potential of Japanese vernacular architecture to produce solutions. And here you find this famous section for bringing light into new architecture, into new Japanese homes, with this kind of clerestory window. And he was probably based on these ideas of the Zen temples that were always, the rock gardens oriented always to the south, to produce solar reflection, as we have proved with the following simulation on the other side of the roof. Find very high values of radiation because of the reflections that are produced by white sand. And this is clearly expressed in this postcard sent by Walter Gropius to Le Corbusier. where he says that therefore all what we have been fighting for has its parallel in all Japanese culture. And finally, the American architect Anthony Raymond, who worked for 40 years in Japan, who was the second person to go back after the Pacific War with General Douglas MacArthur, and the second one was Anthony Raymond, who helped in the reconstruction of Japan. He produced this building in southern India, which is the first example of risole in the history of architecture. It's in Pondicherry. This is sculpture Georgian, American sculpture Georgian, side of the room with the risole. These are simulations of the performance of the risole. And I want just to show you a small detail where Raymond writes window arrangement for tropical countries. So this was a general solution for all the problems of lighting, shadow, ventilation in all tropical countries, not only in India or Japan. And we can look also at Alvar-Aalto. Many buildings in Helsinki. And I will show you 3 works that we have produced recently in Spain. This is a house for musicians. It's based in all Roman constructions, but we developed the concept, the sustainable concept of ceramic roof reinforced with steel. A pavilion of the expo that you are not visiting or will visit because you didn't have time is the Plaza de America Pavilion, New School of Engineering. Especially we focus here on the construction of risoles in the roof. The new railway hub for airport of Barcelona with architect Cesar Portela. These are simulations. You will find the temperature inside the main hall of the railway station. And this is a building for a museum in San Sebastian. And the last example is here in Alameda Verdes. In this case, we designed all the luminaires and lighting fixtures. And I shall be concluding with a few remarks. Provided the high degree of improvisation that still faces the building construction system in many places of the world, the principles that give life to our architecture should be based on truly scientific assumptions and not on convenient speculations. As we all know, that ideas in architecture can be so easily betrayed. People and politicians tend to do the same things and make the same mistakes over and over again, while we architects have to try never to make the same mistake. When science and technology make an advance, the world is changed permanently for the better. Let that be our hope for the architecture of tomorrow. So, we will conceive architecture as a generator of transfer functions, filters between any outside and ruling environment and the comfort of our homes. I would would like to retrieve the concept, whole concept of art, which is draftsman, somebody who draws, but not like an artist, who draws for technical or political purposes, because draftsman comes from Arabic tarjaman, which is interpreter. This is a word which comes from the Crusades. There was need for interpreters, and this interpreter was in the end a master of ceremonies like Gonzalo is, and also somebody who could solve conflicts. And many conflicts became with land survey and the property of land, so that is why he was involved in technical and surveying matters. And what we're trying to do now is the same, to become interpreters of reality. Like in this etching by Albert Dürer, who was a consummate, accomplished artist, but he used tools for drawing perspective. So we don't use our artistry because we are using some scientific tools. That science could help us very much in this matter and to become again interpreters of reality. And it will be to us only to accept or disdain the beautiful reality. The future looks like a crossroad, very difficult to predict. But still, there has to be a future that we can choose. So, this is the treasure I offer you. Knowledge, truth. I know you fear it, yes, but you must seek it. You must grow to love. And as for me, with Julian, Emperor, I pray that Helios, the king of the old, may be gracious to me in recompense for this my zeal, and may he grant me a virtuous life, and more perfect wisdom, and inspired intelligence. And when fate wills, the gentlest exit that may be from life, at a fitting hour, and that I may ascend to thee thereafter, and abide with him forever if possible, but if that be more than the actions of my life itself, for many periods, years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Maria.